Namaskar, Namaste, welcome to Hillside and to our journey through the fascinating world of African diaspora genealogy and ancestry. My name is Bishop Jack Bomar and I serve as the presiding bishop here at Hillside. And I'm excited for you to join our members and founders of Good Genes Genealogy Services who will guide you through our amazing stories and discoveries from other Hillside members. You will also have a chance to learn more about how to trace your genealogy on an interactive technology platform also included in this video presentation. Before I conclude, I want to share with you my initial journey into my family's genealogy. A couple of years ago, I invited Dr. Ann Kimbrough to join me in tracing my ancestry and could only go as far back as my great-grandfather and great-grandmother at the time on my mother's side. And through her services and that of her assistant cousin Mark, I learned a lot about my family that I didn't know, and come to find out my great-grandfather was a lieutenant in the armed forces, the Army, and no one in my family knew that. And so what it has done is it's brought such enlightenment to the family and a sense of pride and joy and knowing who we are. And for many instances in our culture, we can only go back so far in our history. But their services and that of Dr. Ann and what they were able to share has been such a blessing to me and my family. So I want to encourage you to embark upon this journey. Get ready for an exciting time. Thank you so much for joining our community of legacy enthusiasts and story seekers. Let's begin.
Today we're here with Valerie Toliver.
This picture here is a picture of my mother, her parents, and her siblings. Specifically on this one, let's see. No, her brothers are there as well. There are 8 children in all. My mother is the one sitting here, kneeled on the floor as a teen. And this is the aunt that's still living, sitting on this side, that's 90 years old. Everyone else has transitioned at this time. I blessedly have had them all in my life. I was definitely able to spend time with all of them and meet at my grandparents' home in Oakland, Kentucky. We started family reunions back in the early 70s. So, and every other year we continued, except for COVID time, of course. And so this picture is very dear to me, and I think all of us have a copy in our homes. That same day, they did a picture of just the mom and the girls and a picture of the dad and the boys, and we all have that as well. Yeah. I think it's one of few pictures that we have like this. Perfect. It was actually almost 35 years ago in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I took a video class at Black Museum, and he taught us how to interview our relatives and tape it to have for future use. And he also had a genealogist come and speak to that class, and that immediately sparked my interest. So I did that summer interview 2 of my great aunts, and I still have that, and of course at this time have digitized those interviews. And then at that time there was not much available on the internet. So I actually drove about 2 hours from Milwaukee to Madison to the university's library to do search, but it was all on microfiche. So you weren't able to bring things home. You could try to copy what you could. And because of what that all entailed, I lost some interest at that time, kind of put it on the back burner. So over the years, I went back and looked at it and tried to go a little further. My sister had the wonderful idea in the 70s to interview my grandparents. And then in later years, we interviewed my mother and her siblings. So we have all of that on video, and I've got most of those videos that I'm gradually digitizing. So it was an excellent start of some very good information. Start with who you know. Start with your closest known relatives and ask questions. I've told the young people that even if your parent is only in her 30s, 40s, 50s, still start the conversation, because it may be something that she doesn't remember to tell you about when she's in her 70s and 80s. You know, so start the conversation, take good notes, video if you can, and then compare notes. Talk to other relatives, see what their feeling is about that same situation. Just start the conversation. Unfortunately, my mother in her later years had Alzheimer's. So I lost those last years to get more information. Gratefully had asked a lot of questions up until then, but before I became more trained in what I'm doing, I didn't know the right questions to ask, you know, but I got enough information to know where to go from there to search further. So ask questions, take good notes, find a means to record what you have. Find an inexpensive tree program so you can see visually what that looks like, and then build on it from there. I blessedly have one aunt that's still living who's 90, who has very good recall, very solid in her memory. So I'm able to ask her questions, and then I go and I check on Ancestry, and it all matches up. Because you're right, Big Mama did live with them. I couldn't understand what happened. And she explained to me what happened about her getting ill and having to leave the country so she can be closer to her doctors and things like that I wouldn't have known by just seeing something in black and white that she's at that cousin's house. It's interesting because your family that never had the desire to research further may not even know something that's happening right near them. I found the gravesite of that second great-grandfather who had been enslaved and served in the Civil War. I was able to find and put my hand on his gravestone and his wife's gravestone and those of his children. I had to get directions from other cousins how to get from our little country church back up through the wooded area and the small roads to get to the second one. And no one knew except for me finding out through the interview that my sister did with my grandparents, that that's where my grandparents met, at that church. You know, even my aunt, she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah," she said it herself on the tape that everyone was able to listen to, but no one took notes. I transcribed the tape by hand so I could read into exactly what she's saying. And they got married at they met at that same church that my great-great-grandfather is buried at. So had I known years ago to ask her more questions, she had to have a relationship with him. She attended the same church with him, his wife and his children. Before I get to the enslavers, what I'd like to mention also is I have an adopted daughter, and lo and behold, she may be a distant cousin that I have found through another DNA match who also matches her. So you never know what you're going to run across.
And so with her, you're still working to get that verified?
We don't know how we're connected. We know that we're connected through the same person. So we need to figure that path. So that's how the journey begins. When you have a question in mind, always start with what do you desire? What do you want to know? And so you take that and you research further. So I've always wanted to know from where my family came from, especially my maternal side. So I also took the African ancestry test and found that our family originated in Nigeria from the Yoruba tribe. A cousin on my dad's side did it as well, and we originated also from Nigeria, from the Hausa side. So I want to know, who is that ancestor? Who is that one that was overseas in Africa, Nigeria, that ended up on a boat and here in America? Now I know that's grandiose desire, but it is my desire to keep going. So what I did was I was blessedly able to find a couple of my relatives, my ancestors, who served in the United States colored troops in the Civil War. Those records were included pension files, which included information from who they were enslaved by. That information got me to that enslaver and his records to show who he purchased this ancestor from. From that record, I was able to see that That last name, Shields, was also in my match list. There's a match list of other people who are related to you, normally a large list of cousins. So there's a 4th to 6th cousin with that last name, and we're related by blood. So I researched that backwards, back to his tree, connecting to what I had found. And yes, lo and behold, there was a match. I think it's his 5th great-grandfather, is actually my 3rd great-grandfather, because he not only enslaved my ancestor, which was my 2nd great-grandfather, he fathered him. He is the biological father of my 2nd great-grandfather, who was enslaved in his home. And of course, that would also mean that his mother had been enslaved in that home. Unfortunately, I have no further information on her as of yet, but that is the journey that I'm on now.
And you're still looking, you've been looking for the mother for a long time.
Yes, it takes a long time. That's what people have to be very patient with your research. You know, that you're not going to find it immediately. You have to be committed. If it's something you desire, you have to maintain your commitment and continue to search and find other avenues. When I contacted that cousin, that extended cousin, he was not even aware. In fact, his comment was, no, my ancestors weren't enslavers. And I said, well, did you read the will? He said, yes, I've read the will. And I said, well, did you go to page 6, the 3rd paragraph down, underneath the cattle? It is listed 3 Negroes, and they're listed by name, Allerton, Peggy, and Ben. Ben is my great-great-grandfather. And he actually eventually apologized. He had not searched it that thoroughly. But one thing as a black researcher that we know is when we go to the wills, we have to go past all what the enslaver finds really valuable. And that's every good in his house, from plates to chairs to bedroom furniture, till we get to the animals. And we are always below the animals, because although he sees us as a monetary value, we're not as valuable as his animals. Sometimes in the will of that nature, this was more of an inventory, and they list their items. So in that particular will, he actually sold these 3 enslaved for about $500 apiece, which is, you know, quite a bit in that time. One was his actual biological child. The other 2 may be as well. I am not sure who those other 2 are, and that search continues. There's a list of about 20 more for $15, $20. I found out later they were being rented out. At that time, they were being rented out to be returned back to the family. So that was one of my biggest finds. Well, what I did, excuse me, when I moved here from Wisconsin, I did join Ancestry, and I went forth and did the DNA test. And blessedly, just a matter of years ago, before my mother transitioned, was able to do her DNA test. And that has opened up so many doors for me, because I have some of the factual information, or at least oral information given by my maternal side of the family. But to be able to go online and to find confirmation of information they've given and to expand that information further. The DNA test allowed me to meet cousins I didn't know about. I even met a half-niece on my biological father's side that I didn't know existed. I was not raised with my father and his son. So I met a niece that's still living, and she has children. So that opened up some doors. And meeting other relatives through my mother's little country church just recently, talking to a lady who we ended up exchanging names, and I found out when I came home to research that, yeah, she's a distant cousin. So I have gone further, and I've joined research groups in Kentucky. I have a library card in Kentucky. I already have plans to go this summer to the courthouse to do further research on paperwork that's available to me there. I'm also a member of Atlanta and the National Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Societies. All of that gives you more information, more resources to pull upon, more support from others doing the same type of research you're doing. So I have not given up. In fact, since then, have found at least 4 more enslaved family members, and family members that had been enslaved, and A few of those are possibility of being blood relations as well. I have not been able to connect the dots yet, but that's where I'm working at this time. It has definitely given me a greater sense of self. It gives me something to fall back on, to know, as I explained to the young people in my family, I did a presentation at one of our family reunions, is that we're resilient people. We're strong, resilient people. That this great-great-grandfather, as a prime example, after serving in the United States Colored Troops and having to forfeit some of his pension over to the enslaver because they're lost funds, lost profit from allowing this enslaved person to go fight. They get paid back by the government. So that's how that became a paper trail for me to find him. But even after that, he went on to have his own farm, marry, have several children. And one of those children became one of those children who eventually became my parent because of him. And I'm just so grateful. And that's, like I said, that's just one story. You know, there's others where I found that he had to fight to get any pension while he was living and being disabled from the war. He transitioned, his wife continued to fight. She transitioned, and the children continued the fight. And there was no funds ever given. All of us first cousins said, it's time. We need to see one another. So myself and two other cousins decided we would have what we call a mini reunion. No catered food, no money collected, no t-shirts. We're just going to get together. We're going to eat. We're going to enjoy ourselves and talk, share good times, and take pictures. And had a marvelous time. Just had a wonderful time.
Where was that?
That was also in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Okay. All of our reunions are in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The early years, we had a few in Oakland, Kentucky. But normally it's at a park somewhere in Bowling Green, Kentucky, especially as the aunts got older and travel was a little more difficult. Some of them did move away, like my own family moved from here to Indianapolis, where myself and my siblings were born, and then we were raised in Wisconsin. So we did move away, but we always went back home. And when my parents retired, my mother convinced my dad to return to Kentucky. So these are my cousins. Everybody in this picture is a cousin, except for the aunt in the middle, who is the aunt at the bottom of the other picture. This is her this summer prior to turning 90. She turned 90 just this past December. And we have wonderful pictures from that celebration as well.